32.
31.
30.
29.
28.
27.
26.
25.
24.
23.
22.
21.
20.
19.
18.
8.
7. 6.
5.
4.
3.
2.
1.
Hey, Rocky, you want to see me pull a show out of my hat? Nothing up my sleeve. Presto!
And welcome to the Mouthwash Talk Show, a minty, fresh take on politics. And I got my little Bullwinkle back here because I did that little Rocky Bullwinkle imitation there. That's about the only imitation I can do. I can do a couple other ones, but that's probably my best one. And I know a lot of people aren't old enough to remember a whole lot of Bullwinkle, but really a very good cartoon series. I think more for adults than kids at sometimes on some of their stuff. But itty bitty chilly weeny, the spirits are about to speak. So, hey, we got a show lined up for you tonight. We got Chris Spangle on. He does podcasts and different things, and he's been on the Bob and Tom show writing staff and maybe even on the show and all that. So we're going to do a little bit of that tonight. And we also, hopefully we're going to have Tiffany back, but I know Lucy was scrambling for her computer, and I have not seen Tiffany backstage, but we're going to get this thing going here in a minute. And I don't know if you paid attention to the election or not, but Lisa lost by 174 votes. It was 78% of the precincts, and she was ahead by 9 votes, and then all of a sudden down by 174. So it's just like at the last minute. So it was a little bit depressing, but hopefully you enjoyed the show last week. It was the best of, and I just put some clips together of that. And then also, if you were able to catch the Moselle Sanders Step Up to the Plate telethon, I was one of the MCs for that, and it aired, I believe, Saturday from 4 to 7, and it will re-air again on Thanksgiving, and they're working on letting me live stream it on our channels here. So you might be able to see it. So we got to get that figured out because Channel 40 is still working in the 60s with their technology on a few things to get that going. But hey, let's get to our guest here. I'm going to go ahead and bring Chris on. Let's see. Chris, how are you doing tonight? Let's see which one looks better for us here. Oh yeah, you could get 2 better looking guys than this right here.
One time the close up looks better on my face. I don't know what's going on here.
It's the Mouthwash show, man. We make everybody look good.
Yeah,
that's part of our deal.
So thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate it. And go ahead and tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what the heck you're doing on the Mouthwash show. And I'm not even sure I know what you're doing on the Mouthwash show. So
hell if I know. I don't know. My good friend Lucy Brenton set us up and invited me on. I started out in radio in 2004, working for Abdul in the morning, and was his producer for about 4 years. Then went on to the Libertarian Party of Indiana and ran the statewide state party for 4 more years. And then for the last 10 years, I've been at the Bob and Tom show as their digital director. And in the meantime, been doing podcasting, do the We Are Libertarians podcast network, where I host the Chris Spangle show and do another show called The Pat Down. And I'm on BET. I know, surprising me on BET, but
you're a little pale. You're light skin. That's what you're light skin. Okay, I got it.
Miss Pat settles it every Wednesday night. So check that out. Yeah. So fun, diverse, weird career. And I don't know how it happened, but here we are.
Now you're still with Bob and Tom. Then you say you're still producing some stuff with them. Okay. So you're just sort of doing all sorts of things, media and all that. Yeah. So tell us where we can find your podcast. Is that
you can find all my stuff at chris-spangle.com. And you can just search Chris Spangle and you'll find the show. And it's a libertarian take on the news and find current events. And I'm not a crazy libertarian. I'm not a one of those libertarians.
You don't have a boot on your head. You don't have a boot on your head. That guy's worth like $7 million. Did you know that?
Oh, I've interviewed Vermin Supreme. He's actually, the thing about the guy with the boot on his head is that he's a performance artist, and so it's like it's a send up of American politics and it's satire. And if you actually talk to them, you're like, all right, this is kind of brilliant.
Yeah, it's really to put a boot on your head and make $7 million. So I
Yeah.
think, hey, I'm not gonna. I got a show called Mouthwash, so I got no room to talk with that. So the Bob and Tom show on that. So you're one of the producers, writers. What is that?
So I manage all the digital stuff. So if you go
Okay.
online anywhere, I manage the team and do a lot of video editing, podcasting for them, all that stuff.
Okay, yeah. And then how long you been involved with the Libertarian Party?
So I became a libertarian in 2007 when I was a Republican, diehard Republican, and then through my period at Abdul in the Morning as a reporter, I started watching the Republicans, and I was like, they're as bad as the Democrats. Maybe we need a third party. And I was moderately libertarian, and I said, why aren't the Libertarians doing anything? And they said, well, we don't have an executive director. And they could beat the salary I was making at Abdul for $17,000 a year. So I upgraded to $21,000 a year doing that job.
Well, look at you go.
I know. And so then started We Are Libertarians while I was there in 2012 and just have done podcasting. That was my main podcast till the last couple of years when I started doing a few other shows as my interest in libertarianism has kind of waned a little bit.
So what's your regularity on your show? Is it, I mean, we do this once a week, Tuesday night. That's about all I can deal with. It's like herding cats chasing butterflies on the back of turtles. I'm telling you,
it's once a week on the Chris Spangle show, and then usually a couple times a month for like my podcast about podcasting and a couple others. I mean, yeah, it gets hard to do weekly shows, but I've got 2 weekly podcasts that I'm pretty consistent with.
Okay, and that one is the Chris Spangle show, and the other one's We Are Libertarians.
The Pat Down. The Pat Down.
Okay, yeah. And the Pat Down is that basically political?
No, it's a comedy podcast. It's totally different.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, okay. The Pat Down. Okay. All right. Well, that's that. You're a busy man. And
I've got so much going on. It confuses me, let alone you. So I get it.
I think I sort of did my best there on that.
Yeah.
It's been very interesting. I've been wanting I've been interested in your stuff for a while, and I'm glad that Lucy was able to make this connection, and I do see her backstage. So I'm going to do this. We usually have Small Talk on here, so I have not listened to this. Small Talk is Mark Small. He's a disbarred attorney, basically.
He got disbarred. Mark, what'd you do? I love Mark Small. I've met him so many times.
You probably remember, I guess that was Blair Englehart that did the commercial with Bill Levin going down the street.
Yeah, no, I worked for Blair for a year. It was the craziest year of my life. Blair was crazier to work for than the Libertarians or Miss Pat or Bob and Tom.
Yeah, well, and Mark Small was the attorney for the Church of the Cannabis.
Yeah,
too.
No, I was on Mark Small's podcast. I forget what it was even called, but it was like
Civil Discourse. Now, I believe, because I was doing a little bit with him. Yeah, he's still sort of doing it, but you probably understand the fact that we've had. It was so hard 4 years ago when I started this. We had to have cables. I mean, it was just very hard to do live streaming, and our first 4 shows were just technical nightmares to try to get them on. But I mean, StreamYard is pretty easy now. I don't know is that what you use?
Yeah, I love StreamYard. Yeah.
I wish they would not have that thing when you go offline. It asks you how your show was. And then I put on there it was good, and then they say comments. I said take this down. And they've never taken it.
Yeah, Mark was streaming back when it was really hard to stream.
Yes, yeah. And then I helped him get set up on StreamYard, and I don't know how he was able to do it back in the day. So so we got Lucy in the back chat here. What could Mark reveal? So she wants to hear what he's got. And I have not listened to this. He does 2 minutes, sends it in, small talk, and you just don't know what it's going to be. It's generally entertaining, and if I forget to do it, people remind me that, hey, you got to do small talk. But we're going to do this now, and on the other side of small talk, you're going to have the panel. You're going to be out on the hot seat. You're going to answer all the questions, and you'll be just fine. So let's listen to Mark Small and Small Talk.
Hi, Mark Small. This is Small Talk. We like to say that we're free in this country. There are a lot of aspects to freedom. We get to move about without having to show permits or get paperwork from an official to go someplace else. We also get used to the idea that we can speak freely. We have the right of free speech. That's protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. It's also protected by Indiana's Constitution. But here's a problem with it. You're free to speak, but what about defamation? If you say something that harms someone, well, you can be sued for that. And if you are, you've got to pay for your own lawyer, even if you win. It's called the American rule. So what about if you said the truth and somebody's just rich enough they can sue you anyway? That's a bummer. It's called a chilling effect on free speech. That's why people are hesitant to say things that are defamatory about other people. So what about somebody who's a public figure? Because the notion is we want to make sure that people can talk about political issues. So, or issues we have in common, they're widely known. So let's say you've got somebody who's running for political office. The Supreme Court of the United States has held they have protected speech to criticize them, to encourage that in the public. So what if they've done something really bad? And for example, I say that Donald Trump committed treason in the course of obtaining the office of President of the United States in 2016. Truth is an absolute defense. Here's the problem. Trump also has worked to put anybody that he can on the bench in federal courts. So what that means is we've lost rule of law. And if you're scared about being sued because you're saying something that's true, but you know you can't afford a lawyer, well, I don't think that's being very free. Mark Small talk.
Well, there you go. Free speech ain't so free. So that's what I got to say about that. I just, with all the people getting sued these days and all that, it's just, you just got to, I don't know if you got to be careful what you say. It just seems like nobody cares anymore. So let's go ahead and bring Chris. Well, let's do this way. I'm going to bring Lucy out first, and then we'll bring Brad out. We'll see how Lucy's doing because, it's been a couple weeks since we've seen each other. And, we had the show special last week, and I see you still have the red barn back there. So
I do. I'm still sporting rural Indiana. And, the glasses that you've got on are so fabulous and make you look so smart.
Yeah,
Chris looks smart with his glasses, so I popped mine on too.
Yeah, glasses I actually got these at the New York Marathon. They were in your little gift bag. And part of the thing's broken here, but they're orange colored glasses. Instead of rose colored, these are orange colored and all that.
Seems to say something about the culture of New York, but I'm not sure what.
Yeah, I ended up buying some shoestrings for a literacy club too, some orange shoestrings. So I guess the New York Marathon's theme was orange. Aren't the Knicks blue and orange? I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. But it was the first and last time I probably ever go to New York. It was 26 miles of fun.
And that's about all I can deal with those.
A subway, let's see, I had to walk, a bus, a subway, and then take a boat over to where it started. And then you don't realize how far you are away until the race is over. It was a struggle getting home, getting back to where I was staying. So yeah, New York is, I don't have the patience for that. I don't have the patience for New York. I want to get there faster than 2 hours, but hey, some people love it. Apparently a lot of people love it. So
I've been there. It's an amazing city.
Yep.
So welcome, Chris, to the show. And Brad, what have you got to say for yourself today?
Yeah, let's see. He's probably taking notes already.
Yeah, I already had some stuff. Because you said freedom isn't free, and but it's not. That's what we say on Memorial Day and Veterans Day. And so it's just funny where it's there's a multi-use of a phrase that can be just on whatever side it wants to.
Yeah, we seem to have that these days, don't we?
Yeah, just a little bit. I also wanted to know, I'm more of a Coyote and Roadrunner kind of a guy than Rocky and Bullwinkle, but yeah.
Yeah, that Coyote never wins that, and Boris and Natasha. I mean, actually, that sort of came true because we have Boris and Natasha trying to, get into our elections and sabotage everything. So
Canadians are always
Chavez too. You got to look out for him.
Canadians are always sus, as my kids would say.
Yeah. Well, in the Acme products, I can't.
No, did you hear that there was going to be a live action movie where it was Coyote was suing Acme? Because Will Forte was supposed to be the Coyote's attorney. It was, yeah. I would have loved to see that.
Hope we can see that. All right. Well, let's get our guest out here. Let's get Chris out here. And Tiffany, I don't know what Tiffany said. She's coming on. I know that there's people that are tuning in to hear about Tiffany because she actually won her contest
Nice.
up there, and it seemed like it was this thing was figured out on Twitter. their stuff was pretty much on Twitter. I don't know what I think people think Twitter's more important than, or X or whatever you call it, than it is. So you get all caught up in it and, the Facebook and all the social media, but it's great for our show. And I see Lucy you are commenting on YouTube. I see that. Yeah. So if you are watching on YouTube, you can comment. Facebook, you can comment in the live chat. And, Slick Witty wants to know, Brad, where's your glasses? So you got to have your cool.
Oh, Lucy took hers off now too. So like now
it's all out.
I did because they're bifocals and I'm old, and so I can't see everybody clearly. It's ridiculous to grow old.
You look like you're getting ready to do surgery or whatever. So.
If I took mine off, I couldn't see my microphone.
Mine are for acting purposes only. They're my Bullwinkle glasses, I guess. So all right, we're going to let Brad start out this thing. I know he's probably already got some notes and some questions for Chris. I mean, he's got a lot of different things you can talk about. You can talk about the Libertarian Party, politics, Rob and Tom show, the Chris Spangle show, the Pat Down. I mean, I don't know what his comedy is. If he's got
you would what? Yeah, you had touched on like satire. Do you think a drag queen can be satire and then like kind of skate underneath the comedy radar then?
I don't know that they skate under the comedy radar. I mean, comedy is kind of like an open, like I think we tend to think of comedy as like stand-up comedy, for instance, but comedy can be any number of things. It can be wit, it can be satire, it can be sarcasm, which is the lowest form of humor. You can have sorry, Lucy. Yeah.
Sarcasm she just did.
But I think drag inherently would be a form of satire. It's sort of mimicking like modes of femininity, and it's mocking, in the case of what are those people in San Francisco that were throwing out the first pitch, that they're mocking the Catholic Church. Like, I think the whole point is to kind of dress up and challenge traditional norms.
So what do you think about Izzy Izzard? He's an English comedian. He would dress up with makeup and whatnot, and that guy's hilarious. But then he was actually took his makeup off and was in some parts in movies, and then it just sort of fell flat. But as he was dressed up, he seemed very funny. I mean, he had a lot of different angles on,
Yeah, there was a comedian male comedian who did Dame Edna, who was very popular in Britain. So I don't know if you remember Dame Edna, just passed away, and that it's, the one of the oldest forms of entertainment is men dressing up as women. So
it's like Monty Python too. They used to do that.
It started with Shakespeare all the way on up.
Yeah, I just saw John Cleese at the Murat.
Me too. Yep.
Yeah, that was hilarious, and I went with my dad, and it was just a great, reminiscing about all the movies and stuff. Just lots of laughs.
It's kind of like the agenda that we see nowadays, where trans women, men to male to female transitions, are taking over women's spaces, and they're grabbing their gold medals. And it kind of reminds me of old England, right? I mean, didn't Shakespeare have men dressed up as women because the men were better at being women back then too? I guess.
I don't think you were allowed. I don't think women were allowed to be in the
just theater. Keep talking like that. Yeah.
I'm just trying to poke the Democrat. That's all.
Yeah.
No, that was good.
You will see. This is the pile on the Democrat show, Chris. It is very much that. And he is brave, and we've gone through about 3 or 4 of them now. They don't.
I'm a glutton for punishment. Like, this is what I'm reading for my book. It's Endangered Virtues and the Coming Ideological War, and it's to reclaim the historic virtues of the nation's Christian roots. Well, and I read that just to make my head explode, and then
Well,
I get
I'm
to
going to
talk
give
about it.
you a challenge, Brad, because you're a librarian, and that's one of the things that I most respect about you. Because the library, man, that's my happy place. And
Oh
Chris
yeah.
Spangle, shout out to you, Chris, because you're the only person I know that physically reads more books than I do in a year.
I have
So
roughly 200 library books checked out behind me just to make
Yeah,
that extra
Chris,
number.
that is
I have.
awesome.
I'm
He's
not
got
kidding
library
either.
books. He's got library books, and I got Bullwinkle. That just
We
tells
just
you
had
where
our,
I'm at.
annual conference like this week. Like it ended today. I just got back from Indy, and yeah, it was great. But we were all really excited and kind of jazzed up.
I love the library because I'm working on a project right now, and so the central library is just this great resource to go through, and you can check out books, and then I eventually buy them if I know that I'm a slow reader. But yeah, I mean, I've got literally just stacks behind me. I think the library is such an important resource. That's the thing I'm most statist about is we need a good
yes,
library.
yes,
Yeah.
I'm like very happy where my tax dollars go.
Yeah,
But
I'll pay that
Great.
I'll pay that $2 a year.
This is fantastic.
So I will give a shout out to Chris because one of the things that, and this is like genuine, I want to be smarter. I want to have somebody else do the hard work of condensing the thought into something that's rational and compelling. And that's why I listen to, the Chris Spangle show, is because you can take Chris's knowledge and, fortunately for me, it's distilled through a libertarian freedom viewpoint. And I'm going to sound smarter having listened to it and follow him on Goodreads. Because once you put your reviews of the books up there, that really lets me know if I should even bother.
Yeah, if I finished a book, it was worthwhile. So thank you, Lucy. I try to do my show in a way that anybody I really like working at Bob and Tom have become obsessed with like you learn how little people pay attention and how little people kind of understand. And I don't mean that as a slight. I mean that as everybody's busy. And so it's hard to kind of grasp a lot of this stuff. And so what I really try to do with my show is, excuse me, I'm very itchy. It's dry. Is try to give like an intro guide to some of these issues that are going on. I mean, and sometimes I'm learning a little bit myself, but I'm putting tens of hours into each one of these hour-and-a-half episodes sometimes to kind of give a good explainer of what's going on. And I try to be fair. I try to give everybody's opinion, not just my opinion. And I think that's a differentiator between me and a lot of other news podcasts is that it's coming probably to my detriment. I should probably be more angry and tell people exactly what to think. And then they're, racist or totalitarian scum if they disagree with me.
Well,
but I think it's really
Rob Kendall. We have Rob Kendall for that. He takes that up for everybody.
I've never met a guy who is more different in real life than on air than Rob Kendall. So it's important, I think, for people to understand the basics and to have access to resources or figure out where the resources are where they can learn more than it is for me to tell my opinion about it. Like, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to tell you whether or not to get the COVID shot, right? So let me just try to help you think of this process through. I'm not a foreign affairs expert. I'm not in Israel, but here's some history. Here's like, I-24 and Al Jazeera. It's like choose your own adventure with which, avenue of news you want to read. But like, at least you'll understand the contours of the information zone. So then you can dive in and maybe kind of start picking that apart. And so that's truly what I believe in is trying to get people in the front door and try to get them to understand a little bit more so they can reduce that anxiety of like, I know I should pay attention to this stuff. I don't know where I should start. Well, that's what I want to do for people.
Yeah, we find that out when I'm out on the campaign trail for my wife this time was how little people know and how few of people vote. I mean, and our district was the lowest turnout of any contested race. And that's pathetic. I mean, but a lot of people have just given up. They said, it doesn't matter. I don't care. And they don't understand that if you don't vote in your neighborhood, then your neighborhood ain't going to get nothing because politicians aren't going to come there and they're not going to care.
Well, if you wanted to understand local politics, where would you start? Would you start with the Indy Star, which does not have local politics in it? Or would you start with the Indianapolis Capital Chronicle, which I think is a great publication, but it's talking over people's heads? Like, where's that? And I'm not saying I'm the in-between there, but I think in terms of like how people consume information, that's where like the Voxes of the world with the Explainers and the New York Times have
you heard of the Current for like the current for Carmel and current for Fishers and current for
That's
whatever.
all just Indianapolis Star like mini franchises, right?
Really? I'm not sure.
No,
I've heard of
I
them,
mean,
but I don't know them.
they at least cover more, at least during like the library board stuff. They would kind of cover that. I think Edra got in trouble for writing a letter to the editor of that. And that led to like Ray saying, "Oh, well, you know, you need board approval before you say anything to anybody."
She quit this week, and then also the Newfields director that had all the hoopla about, she quit. So it's a tough business being in charge of stuff. I think people don't realize that when you're in charge of things, especially when they're expensive. It's nice things they get them. So, Chris, do you notice? You know, I've noticed our show. We're on our 146th episode, and I know, crazy, and it seems like people are tuning out of regular news and they're looking for shows like yours and shows like ours, because we're looking out the front window of what's going on right around us. And we're not worried about, we're worried about what's going on in Israel, but I got squatters down the road here that we're going to talk about, or, whatever that we have going. Do you notice that the popularity of shows like this, people will watch, listen to it as a podcast or as a live view, like we have some of our people here? Have you noticed a change in that?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I've been podcasting since 2007, and so I'm an OG in the space. And doing my show since 2012, you were really operating like your show. We were different because it was a group of friends sitting around talking about politics from a libertarian perspective, and so it was a bit of a chat show. It was like Bob and Tom, but for libertarians. And it was very popular until I got married and my wife wouldn't let my friends come over to my house anymore. But then I had to adapt the show a little bit and do more interviews and stuff just to make sure that I, am actually posting content. But the thing about news is you've got hedge funds that have cannibalized the institutions like the Indy Star. And so where are people going to get their news? And you've got these small town newspapers that can afford to pay people with master's degrees $22,000. Well, that's just not going to work as an economic model. So you take Henry County, Indiana, and the Boss Hog of Liberty there in Newcastle. It's a podcast on the We Are Libertarians podcast network. They are the news in Henry County now. There's a newspaper out there, but there's 1,000 people that watch Boss Hog on Facebook every week, and they have the mayoral debates. They have the interview questions. So they were the first canary in the coal mine for me that media was changing. It was not only going more niche, it was also going to be different geographically. And so one thing that social media was supposed to do is kind of in a post-Christian society where we are not, and a supposedly post-racial society, post-ethnic society, right? We're not sorted like the Germans live over by the Athenaeum anymore, and the Polish live down by you, right? Like we're not sorted by where we chain migrated and within ethnicities. We're not sorted into kind of geographical locations even anymore. Like when I grew up in Plainfield, you played Optimus T-ball against all your neighbors. Well, now you have travel balls, so you're not even interacting with your neighbors. You have all of these different ways that we used to sort each other that don't work anymore. And now how do people sort themselves? Well, they do it by niche, they do it by interest, and they do it on Facebook, and they do it in groups. And I think podcasts play a unique opportunity in serving those niches. And podcasting is still in its infancy. It's still its adoption rate is 40 to 45%. In 10 years, it's going to be 90%, and it's going to be very predominant, much like YouTube is. And I think you're going to see shows like ours really rise up. Now, one project I'm working on that I'm about to announce is a kind of a research project to figure out how can we get podcasters to think about local community. So instead of trying to build your own Steven Crowder show or Ben Shapiro Daily Wire, or like build your own mass media model, how can you serve your geographic location and your niche, right? So my experiment is basically going to be Indiana history, right? I love history. So can I do Indiana history and then have the podcast be the marketing tool to do in-person events? So can Mouthwash serve local politicos by doing in-person events? So can we really start to solve this loneliness problem that Americans have because we've lost connection, and start to use podcasting as a tool to start to heal some of that social fabric? Because social media does a terrible job of connecting people and making them feel like they're friends. It really does a good job of tearing us apart. And that's why I think this medium will excel. And that's why you see the growth and the interest that you do, is people have some niche interest and then they go, well, these people are nerdy about it too, and I'm pretty lonely, so let me connect with them and they'll become my surrogate friends. Well, now how can we go one step further and start getting you to connect those people so they become friends with each other, especially locally and in person?
Yeah, and that's that is one of the things that we've noticed. We have, some regular people that tune in live, and then we have a lot of people that will listen and watch later. And then we go on channel 40, which is sort of an experiment in itself, because I've never seen our show on channel 40 because I don't have an antenna.
Right.
I'm trying to get them to do some live streaming and things. But after doing the telethon and I'm not with them. I edit the show, send it off to them. And I see those folks about once every couple months. When we did the telethon, we actually was probably the first time we were all together for an extended period of time. So yeah, it is like that. And by the way, we're going to have a Black Friday party here at the Chateau de Mars Hill that everybody's welcome to come do that. So Lucy,
I would, but it's Mars Hill, and I won't go to Mars Hill.
I'll come.
Chris,
I'll
it's
come with a gun on each hip.
It's BYOB. Bring your own bullets. I'm sorry. That's how we roll over here. Now you come to Mars Hill. It's all you look at that map, Indianapolis map of the little red dots of all the homicides, and you'll see one section down there in southwest Indianapolis with no red dots. We're proud of that.
Mars Hill now with less murders.
Yeah, it's like, well, I used to
murder
joke.
less.
I used to joke about I don't have a mortgage on my house, but I might be murdered. But now I'm good. It's all good. We're good. We got.
Oh my gosh. We need to have a whole show on why owning a paid off house is a really dumb idea. Makes your heart
like it. I don't have a payment. I like that.
I've actually got a couple of questions for you, Chris, and I hope it's okay if you guys, well, it doesn't matter if it's okay because I'm going to ask anyway.
Yeah. Hold on before you get started, Lucy. I just want to let you know, Chris, that Lucy has ruined two people's political careers on this show. So hopefully you don't have any political aspirations.
I pray to God she ruins mine next.
Okay, well, good. There you
go ahead, Lucy. Yeah, well, all I did was ask a question and they opened up their own mouths and spoke the truth, which unfortunately was not very popular. So this is actually something that you just said, Chris. You said you've been podcasting since 2007 and we're at 45% going to 90%. I was looking at podcasting back in that time, 2005, 6, and 7, but I had little kids and I was super busy. And I knew it was probably going to take off, but it didn't seem like much of a priority. And when I was thinking about it again this last year, I thought the market was already saturated, but it doesn't sound like it is. So my questions for you are, what are the monetization opportunities, increasing local celebrity, those sorts of things that are open to people that want to be in podcasting? And I'm totally inspired by what you've done with Boss Hog of Liberty. How did you help Boss Hog? And how did you, how can we get help from you? Is that even possible?
Yeah, I take full credit for all of the success of the Boss Hog of Liberty. I did everything. I made those guys. No, Jeremiah and Dakota have.
I think it was Sarah that actually is behind
Sarah Morrill. Yeah. Well,
I was believing you until you said that.
They went to a property owner who listened to the show and he said, look, this is abandoned. Having you will increase my property values. And then it just totally changed the building because they have a studio there. It is
really cool. Amazing. I've been there. It is genuinely a cool setup.
It's a fun little hangout. I mean, and it just takes somebody being committed, like John, like you all, to just say, look, we're just going to be here at this time every week with no exceptions. I think Jeremiah's missed like one podcast in 5, 6, 7 years or whatever. And it really just takes that commitment. I mean, it's about being consistent with it and it's about being relevant to your audience. So if you're going to do a podcast about Indiana knitting, then don't wade into politics. Maybe you could figure out a way where your podcast is the politics of knitting and how it can heal the divide or whatever, right? Like maybe there's ways to do it, but if you're going to serve a niche, you've got to serve the niche. You've got to serve people. That's the number one thing that you've got to start thinking about. I think if you think about podcasting as how can I increase my celebrity, you're not going to be a celebrity. I'm not a celebrity. You can become known or well known in your niche, that can create all kinds of great opportunities, like business development. If you do a podcast, you can get an interview that, look, you may not be able to get lunch with the person who's at the top of your vertical, but they'll come on your podcast because of their own vanity, right? So you can do some business development. You can get a new job out of it, right? So I think that to me has been some of the most powerful ways to monetize, is just like the networking aspect. And, if you come into it with looking to serve a niche and do it well and do your best every episode, other people see that and they go, how can we work together to make this happen? I think monetization, you've got to build a community first. You've got to have a good show and you've got to have a good community around it. And then you will be able to grow your show and monetize. And it took us 5-6 years before we were able to really monetize through Patreon. And that has become a lot harder in the last couple of years because there's a lot of subscription fatigue. I mean, how many more $10 subscriptions can I afford? Right. So you almost have to have a product that people are passionate about, that is really serving them so well that they go, I don't care what I get in return. I just appreciate that you put this out and I find value in it. I'm going to give you a subscription. If you get some numbers, then you can get some advertising. I mean, the Chris Spangle Show does enough that I'm able to get a few $100s in ads every month, right? Just kind of like YouTube ads, basically. And then, in terms of, and then if you do it long enough, you become an expert. And if you need consulting, then podcastingandplatforms.com, you can check me out and I can help you start. I work with everybody from, people who are developing their own personal brands and using a podcast to anchor that content, to I did a training session for the Indian Historical Society on how they could do podcasts. I mean, it's really an exciting time to be in digital media because there's so many ways to look at podcasting as your content marketing and then chopping everything out of that, right? All your social media, your video, everything. And so I think you're seeing corporations and businesses and institutions try to wade into podcasting, not nailing it necessarily just because you say one wrong thing and the board member gets mad, and you don't really want that one staffer to become a personality because then they may want more money, right? So that's where I think independent podcasters are going to really kind of thrive, because all of a sudden you've got one passionate person that's the driving force for that. And events, I'm guessing that at some point podcasts can drive events locally, and you could charge admission for that in some way or form.
Yeah, well, I'm amazed at the passion. I started this silly show with a couple of younger millennials. Actually, I think was a Gen Z was one of them, and they didn't last that long. But the folks we have now are, nobody gets paid to do this. We just do it. We just have fun doing it. And somebody asked me the other day, what do you do this for? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, originally it started out because media didn't cover local politics. And if you weren't in the club, you didn't get, so that's
John, why did your grandfather and my grandfather go to the VFW to play cards? Seems totally superfluous and like a waste of time. You're leaving your family for the evening to go play cards. Well, my grandpa sold insurance that way. He sold, his buddies, and it was a way for him to deal with his PTSD from the war, right? Like it's community. Community is the best part of podcasting, and I think we need to own that, as opposed to I'm not picking on Lucy. It's the number one question is, how do I start? Number two is, how do I make money on it? And I always say the number one question is, how can you serve people to build a community? And that's really the best part, because John, y'all get community out of it, and you serve other people in your community.
Yeah. And we've become friends, and, people. And Brad, you haven't been to one of our parties yet. Maybe you can make it down for the Black Friday. We have plenty of rooms if you want to stay overnight. And I know that you've been to a Fish concert, so I know you probably won't be in any good shape to drive home or anything. So you have to stay. No. We might even let you come in the house. You won't even have to sleep out with the chickens, but
sweet. Yeah.
yeah, that's part of it. And you're hitting it right on the head about stuff that we just don't know why we're doing this. We are. Let's get into some politics real quick. I just want to I want to pick on Lucy. She's our lone female here tonight. And I just want to point out that the national debt, when we let in 1920, we let women start to vote. The national debt was hardly anything. It was very low. And now you look at the national debt today, and I don't think we have a shopping problem in Congress. And I know that there's a bunch of men in there, but there is some women there too. So I just want to ask, since we let women vote, do you think they're responsible for the national debt?
110%, because we kept giving birth to jerks like you that spent all the money.
Oh yeah, make it fun. Make fun of me because I ate a lot of groceries. I hear you. I deserved it. It was part.
Hashtag end the Fed. Hashtag taxation is theft. Let's just get that out of the show.
Yeah, let's get that out of the way. Well, it's like now they're talking about taxing. And Chris, you live in town here. You live in Marion County.
I live downtown.
What district is that you got to?
I don't know. I had Jesse, the Democratic
13.
Socialist. Yeah, thank God there was a libertarian that I could vote for.
We actually had Jesse and Libby on the show. And honestly, I don't know what Jesse, he thinks he's this Democrat socialist, but I think he was almost like a male version of Lucy. He wanted to burn it all down.
There was a surprising number of things that he said that were, pro-liberty and very lucid and some good ideas. And I was trying to figure out, was he in an alien suit? I mean,
it's the horseshoe theory. The left and the right eventually come all the way back, right? And it's like why are the right and the left? They're all anti-Semitic because eventually they get
they're like a boomerang.
Right? Yeah.
So you've seen our politics in Indianapolis, and it's frustrating. And in Libby, she really was a fish out of water trying to get this stuff done. And, Tony Katz, bless his heart, had her on a couple times, and she was so nervous the first time that she was on. And then if you actually look at her social media and her just public appearance, I couldn't find a picture of her. When I did a show, I looked up Chris Spangle. I got all sorts of pictures. I couldn't even find a picture of her. I had to have her send me one because she wasn't out there in that public sphere.
Suppression is a real thing, John.
It's the thing is that if you're a libertarian candidate, you're doing it all by yourself, literally. There's not 3 or 4 people that want to pitch in to help on your city council campaign. If you're running for governor, you're lucky to have 3 or 4 people helping you, right? There isn't the money. The money is like, maybe we can get enough money. Libby sent me a mailer, right? And that postcard was probably her biggest expenditure. It's very difficult to run as a libertarian. You know that, especially in a straight ticket state, you're already at a huge disadvantage because Republicans and Democrats are cheating. So it's absolutely cheating. It's just, it was meant to be cheating. If you look up the history of straight ticket voting, it was meant to get all the people that you just got drunk to go, are you for the chicken or are you for the donkey? Right. And then they go, okay, I'm for the chicken. That's why the chicken exists. Bamboozling voters.
I'll tell you one thing that'll surprise you. Jefferson Shreve gave Libby $500.
Really? Okay.
I kid you not.
Here's the thing is that if Shreve had won, Mayor Ballard was largely successful because he had a Republican council. That wasn't going to be the case for Jefferson Shreve if he won. He wasn't going to have the same success. It was going to be lights out, lame duck politician to begin with.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, we got Slick Witty in our comments here. He helped to knock on many, many doors for Libby. So she probably got a little more help. I mean, and then Mark Renselberger, he ran against Kristen Jones and did absolutely nothing and still got 25% of the vote.
Yeah.
So, I told him, you can come on our show, and that's one of the things that I don't think we struggle with it, but you talk about niche and community. And, we have more right-leaning people on this show, but we try to do right, left, center. And it's difficult to do that sometimes and please all the people. So, we got crazy Lucy up there ruining people's careers. And then we got that lunatic librarian Brad down there. And then Tiffany, she just sent me a message, said she was coming on. So I don't know if she's going to be on, but Then we got Tiffany up there in Fishers causing trouble on the library board. So, it's like,
I'm just grateful to be here because, once Tiffany gets on, she and John are going to start having this Republican love fest, and Brad brings some balance to the force. I'm just here
Oh
to
my
stir
God,
the pot.
do we have to sit through that?
See that Todd,
It's not real, right? Like that can't
Chris, they love me here. They love me. They never make
believe
fun.
it.
Actually, Tiffany makes more fun of me than anybody. She said,
Well, Chris, I had a question to follow up because you were talking about, kind of how social media is kind of like alienated people in a way. And so, how do you how would you force interaction? Like, how would you force people to actually like get out? Like I'm always of the mindset, like you can suggest as much, and offer as many activities or as many opportunities for people to leave their house. But like, have you noticed like a more sedentary life style of people, I guess?
Yeah. Well, I would channel my inner Democrat. I would pass a law that would put a gun to their head and make them leave their house. Mandatory fun when I'm elected. You have no choice. No, I think that there is definitely the studies show that people are becoming more insular. I saw an article today that I saved that I didn't read yet. I think it was in the Atlantic that was basically saying people are becoming more and more isolated. They're becoming more, we don't like to leave our house. I started noticing this when I worked with Rupert's kids. People would show up. We stopped asking for volunteers. And I do a radio show interviewing nonprofits here locally. And none of them want to ask for volunteers because people come up, they take their selfie, and then they never come back, right? It's hard for people to make a commitment on even church groups, for instance. It's hard for church groups to kind of, if you've been in a church and you've gone to a small group, it eventually fizzles out unless there's that one person kind of keeping the balloon in the air. That's why I think you really have to I don't know the secret sauce. That's part of the investigation. It's like, what's the blueprint that I could give to podcasters to kind of help them figure that out? What is going to get you out of the house? There's so many factors to it. Like, I have a 5-month-old and a 4.5-year-old. So if I leave or my wife leaves, we're putting the kids on the other person, right? I think that is a hard thing. I was at a church group with a men's group, and the guys were like feeling guilty that they were there, and it was 7 p.m. and they couldn't believe their wife gave them permission to leave. And like, they were there doing something that benefits them and ultimately their family. And it's like, I think people just have kind of built this guilt into going out and being social, especially in a family oriented situation, right? Where you've got young kids. I noticed the Libertarian Party, if they were single, or it was a married couple without kids, they were all gung-ho. But the second they had kids, forget about it. And I get it, because you have so many things that are going on. So what will motivate you to get out? I think that's where shared interest comes into play as kind of the iceberg breaker, the tipping point. If you at least listen to a podcast, you listen to John and Lucy and Brad, or you listen to me, there is some familiarity that when you get there, you can talk to that person. They'll be inviting. They'll talk to you. You're not walking into a context like the library, the central library puts out a call and says, we're having a networking event or a social event or a lecture, right? Well, you don't know anybody that's going, and you're not going to get a friend to go because they don't want to go to that thing. But a podcast, maybe you have a couple people in that Facebook group that are going. So at the Pat Down every October, we have 500 people spend thousands of dollars to fly to Atlanta to meet us and to meet each other, right? And so the power of kind of connecting, I think, can make a big difference. And then from there, the community is not about the podcast host. It's that, man, I really like seeing Tiffany, and I really like seeing Brad, and I really like seeing Donald, and I really, right? Like, it's that like almost weekend getaway, like camp mentality. I can't wait to go back to Camp Epworth because I'll see my friend, or right. So I think that's really where it starts to kick in. It's the people that you don't want to miss out on. That FOMO kicks in a little bit. And also it just speaks to that part that once you get into community and you get into people and around people, not in people, please behave yourselves. But once you get around people and you recognize, wow, I really was actually pretty lonely and I didn't know it. I think that starts to become a motivator too. I don't think there's a magic bullet, right? We have, if you read Bowling Alone, there's like by Robert Putnam, there's like 100 different reasons why we're in this situation where we have just shredded people's social capital of our society.
Do you think that's somewhat because people are afraid they're going to offend somebody else? I mean, it just seems like I know some people I'm afraid to say the wrong thing to the wrong person.
Maybe I think I personally think cancel culture is way overblown. I think it's a made up fear. I mean, you go look at the Pat Down YouTube. I get called a racist every week. Guess what? Doesn't affect me because I'm not a racist. You know, people are going to say whatever they want to say about you. The fact is that, yeah, there is some social awkwardness. I think we have become far more socially awkward. And the only way through that is like, I don't want to go to the gym because I don't know which weights to lift. And so I stand there and I stare and I look at the weights and I get overwhelmed and confused. We've let that social muscle atrophy. And so,
well, there's the fear of being judged. Like, you don't want to look like you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
In any kind of situation. And
I walked into a networking event last Wednesday morning, and the room was packed and everybody knew each other and was talking to each other. And I just stood there like this.
I do that all the time at conferences.
Yeah. No. But you know what? After about 2 minutes and you just sort of slide up, or there's some great extrovert like my wife, who's a golden retriever and makes everybody feel super welcome, comes up to you and talks, then you're fine, right? Then you can kind of, but you know, I'm not that person. I'm intimidated by this stuff, right? So,
you know, that also speaks to leadership. When I ran CIREA, Central Indiana Real Estate Investors Association, back in the day, that's been more than 10 years ago, we actually instituted, I called it the church model. We had people that were volunteers that wanted to be ambassadors. There were clear benefits to being ambassadors, you know, discount or free memberships. And we had people assigned who were gregarious and extroverted like I am, that their whole job was to find people that looked like they didn't know who to talk to or didn't know what to do next. And so when we had somebody new come in, you know, and they're bringing their free coupon from the internet for their free entry, we had an ambassador come and their job was to find out one or two interesting facts about them and then go introduce them to somebody else and pass them off to somebody with a similar interest. And so I think that leadership is really crucial to model that kind of behavior.
Yes, I would agree that there's usually a leader of the group that sort of drives things, as Chris said earlier, that somebody's got to keep the balloon in the air, so to speak. Because I think we just
I don't know that people trust anyone else to keep the balloon in the air. You know,
you must be the firstborn
away from the cat.
Yeah,
yeah. Keep the cat in the air.
I'm the firstborn too, so I get it. I don't trust anybody to be responsible except for me. I mean,
even like elected officials, even like local elected officials. It's almost like local ones are almost worse because it's like, I know him. He lives down the street, you know, and so there's like that familiarity to it. But I think that there's like a trust issue, you know, not to just go to conspiracy mode, but like, you know, everybody. Kennedy assassination and stuff and everything that came out with that. Again, it's like we just stopped trusting anybody. So who's going to lead people if you're not willing to trust anyone?
Who's all the firstborn in their family? I heard you say that, Chris. I am. Lucy, are you the firstborn in your family? No.
I'm the baby. When I show up, it's a party.
Okay. How about you, Brad? Are you first one in your family?
Oh no, I'm the baby.
Baby. Okay, so we got two.
That's why John's the host and you two are the co-hosts.
Yeah, I mean, that's why. Yeah. You believe me. You both remind me of my two little sisters. I tell you, pain in the neck. It's tough being me. No respect. I tell you. Ooh,
well, you know, I have 10 kids, and so I've got this whole lab going on of, you know, the oldest to the youngest, and it's especially having children like I do that range in age from 32 all the way down to 10. I've literally grown up two different generations, as have probably Reagan's mom, you know, with the number of kids that she has. And so you're such a different parent I was thinking about this yesterday as, my daughter spilled something like, yeah, it's not a big deal. Like, but when 32 years ago or 22 years ago, when my oldest daughter was that same age, I might have actually been upset. But now I'm like, yeah, whatever, the carpet's ruined. I'll just buy more carpet later. But when you're a younger parent, I think you tend to be more critical. At least I was.
I think that's called giving up.
Yeah. Well, that's
I'm
spoken
outnumbered.
like the last in a family, the youngest in a family. That's exactly we always kidded my sister. We're all like Kentucky cousins, like, 62, 61, 69. I mean, we're like bang, bang, bang. No wonder my mom went crazy. But my youngest sister got away with it's like I was like the whipping boy. It's like, hey,
I
Johnny,
heard that all the time,
And then
Just-
yeah,
it was what it was. Like, I can't control it, so you get more, or I get away with a lot more. But we learned so much from the older.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was definitely.
learned-
They definitely didn't want to do what I. And Chris was. You have younger siblings? How many?
I do. I have a younger brother and a younger sister.
Yeah, and they learned a lot from you getting in trouble, didn't they?
Oh yeah, I got the spoon the most. Eric never got the spoon.
And he's the youngest.
I have this awesome older brother. He's actually a very solid citizen. He's a firefighter getting ready to retire in Indianapolis. And what was awesome is because he had that protective thing towards me, like nobody else could mess with me, but he's the only one who could beat me up. He's the one who really played a large part in educating me about, hey, all my friends that are hitting on you, these are mean, horrible, terrible, lecherous people. Like, don't go out with any of my friends. And, he taught me some things that, every teenage girl trying to get into bars underage should know. Like, the cops that are undercover are actually wearing tennis shoes. I mean, those are the kinds of things he taught
So they
me.
can run fast to catch you.
Yeah, so they can catch you. He said, always look at a man's shoes and you can tell whether or not he's a cop. I don't know if that's true, but I definitely believed it when I was 16.
Yeah. So, well, my two younger sisters were fairly attractive, and I had, just about every one of my friends was like, I don't know what it is about a best friend and their sister, but there is something there that has a magnetic effect. I'm sure of it.
Proximity.
Yeah, it's like, that's men. They're like, cavemen. They just club them. They club the nearest woman, and then you're done. So
yeah, but sometimes they have like the exact same face, and you just can't do that.
Nah, well, fortunately, I look like my dad, and my sister looked like my mom, so there was not that problem with my sister. So that was good, and my mom was quite beautiful. She was in the fraternity Crescent Girl and all that, and my dad was the victor of that spoils, and they're still one of his friends to this day. I had a hamburger with him a couple years ago. He said, "Yeah, I had the hots for your mom." I'm like, I don't know how to take that. I really, I don't know what to think about that. But hey, it's better than the other way, I guess. So, but all right, so we're gonna wind this thing up here. Anybody got another final question for Chris? I mean, I think this has been like a podcast intervention tonight for us. It's like sort of reevaluate where we are and do better. And we want to do better. So
I always like to come on a show and leave them shamed. That's
well, it's not hard here. We got Brad for that.
Yeah. Well, no, I actually wanted to see if Chris, like, with everything that was happening at Hamilton East, with the libraries and just book bans in general and collection development policies that don't make sense. We're actually trying to get like just regular people to go to board meetings, even if there's not like an issue now, just to go and say, I'm proud of our library if you are, and just say like kind words and like just be an advocate for the library, because
you think it's a mess up there. I'm in Marion County, and my dream, if Abdul had actually won mayor, I was like, I didn't say this to him, but I was like, if you win, all I want is to be on the library board to protect the library from both sides, right? Just an aware middle. So I made a post about Micah Beckwith, and Micah actually reached out to me and said, this guy probably doesn't know me at all, because I was fairly critical. And we ended up having lunch, and I heard his point. We really almost never got to the library. It was like we were walking to the car, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot to ask you about this library thing. And like, that's the extent of what I know about it. I haven't followed it terribly close. So I'll tell you what I think about it, but I want to give that disclaimer because
and you don't have to address it like individually.
No, I look at, moving. If all they were doing was actually moving some books from kids and teen sections to adult sections where adults could have more informed consent about what their kid is checking out, I'm for that. I think that parents do have a right to have oversight over their under 18 kids in terms of what they're talking about. And I know, parents will abuse, blah, blah, blah. And I just think that's such a small number. I think that a parent's right to monitor what their kids are consuming is fundamental. But I also am a hardcore free speech advocate. I am under no circumstances ever in favor of the library removing those books. I think those books should exist. And I could probably be talked into saying, look, some of these teen books need to be kept in the teen section because the parents are crazy and the teen has a right to explore alternative worlds, right? But I think what's the standard, right? You have to have your community have those conversations and do exactly what you said, which is show up to the meetings. And instead of the over the top insane stuff that I watched one live stream, I watched about 2 hours of a meeting, probably about 2-3 months ago, maybe less. And it was not the informed conversation that I had hoped. It was a lot of hysterical people screaming things that weren't relevant in the comment section of the thing. And you just go, look, you are reacting to what John Green said, who probably hadn't had a conversation with the board. You're reacting to what the press had said, which is not calling Micah Beckwith and asking his point of view, right? Like they're not doing their due diligence. I would love at some point to do a narrative storytelling podcast on this particular incident.
Please, God, do that.
I would love to do that. But,
I asked Micah a question and he blocked me. All right.
No, I found Micah to be very open to. I mean, I don't know if maybe it's online, but like in person, I found a lot of his explanations. I didn't agree with some of it, but I found him at his willingness to reach out and say, look, you clearly don't know my side. I want you to hear it. I thought that was good. I'd love to do a podcast like, who's she was in the God Hates F Words group, the Megan Phelps Roper, excuse me. She did a podcast for Barry Weiss's Free Press, and it was basically about J.K. Rowling, the witch trials of J.K. Rowling, and I thought it was amazing. And I'd love to do that around the library. I just haven't ever reached out to anybody to do it, to get the ball rolling.
Speaking of the library, we got Tiffany backstage. I'm going to bring her on here, and you can ask some questions yourself if you'd like to. Let's.
Yeah, because I think this is like the library wars are such a like microcosm of what's going on, and there's all these different. The problem is that it's easy to be confused, because if you sit down with the 10 principal players in an incident like this, you're going to walk away with 10 people saying something that you kind of go, I totally see their point of view. And I think there's like, it really pulls on the tension of free speech, people's ability to self-actualize, get access to materials. What are community standards? Micah made the point of like, why would we allow in our library something that would get me banned if I went on the state house floor and read it, right? So that's not the community standard, right? So I think people have to wrestle with all of these questions. So one day, if I get time and maybe a little bit of money, that my goal would be to sit down with like everybody involved in the Hamilton County Library thing and do like a series of interviews with the principal players and put that into like a podcast to tell the whole story, because I just think there's so much at play there that is kind of like boots on the ground culture war, and you could tell it in a fair way. I think
there's a lot of legal fees that need like explained too.
Yeah, no, I think like pulling all the books off the shelf to make people read entire books. I don't know who is responsible for that. That's bad that's crazy, right? Like, I think there's
that's called not violating anyone's First Amendment rights.
what do you mean?
The way that the policy was created, it had to be applied to every book in its entirety in order to not violate the First Amendment. But I loved what you were saying, Chris, about talking to all the players individually to put together this
montage.
What's that thing that old women's a quilt? The quilt.
Yeah.
You know, because
Old women?
everybody's got a little piece and everything comes together. But you were talking about, like, you know, constitutional rights, community standards, and what is not part of library science is community standards.
Yeah.
And that's where we are in Hamilton County. Is as the board president, I will often just say we're at the intersection of library science and community standards.
Yeah.
Well, that's just where we are.
If the board and everybody involved would ever be open to doing like a narrative nonfiction podcast that is fair to everybody and possibly unfair at the same time by telling the whole story, I'd love to do that, because I think there is a story here to tell based on my conversation that I had with Micah, based on watching, like, knowing enough about government, watching your live stream, that 2 hours. It's like watching people who actually have had conversations, know how this is all supposed to work, know the statutes and everything, and then the public comment time, and it's totally disconnected, right? Like so I think it's just it's an amazing story. And then you got John Green kind of coming in, and people would be fascinated with that part. But yeah, I'm a free speech.
What I loved about that was public comments were like, you know, I believe blah, 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 blah. And John Green, #1 fan, blah, blah, blah.
Hashtag fighting for John Green. Yeah, I know. And then the Central Library throwing shade and having John Green on the cover of their website still.
Yeah. But it is interesting because some of it did become, very, very passionate people, parents on both sides, a lot of ideas, and people coming together. But some of the emails that I got were a lot more informative, but sometimes some of the comments were very performative.
Oh, you know, I actually have the Cassie clip here still up on the thing. I don't know if you saw that, Chris, when I went up to the library board after all this stuff was going, and I went to maybe the meeting that you saw where they were really shouting down Ray, and Micah didn't say a whole lot, and he left early. He had a funeral or something to go to. And this Cassie Jackson is obsessed with Micah. And we almost had her on the show, but she won't come on unless Micah's on here because she wants to debate him. And
that's not going to be a debate. You just want to you want a platform to yell at him.
It's going to be MMA. It's going to be
right.
That would probably be a pretty good battle if we could get him in.
Oh, John, I mean, great for ratings, bad for cultural
just
fabrics and societal norms. And
societal suicide.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, and she called Tiffany a disgrace to Black women. I mean, it just,
was she a white female progressive?
Of course, she's a white female progressive.
No, did I give it away?
No, I think to sum it all up, I think libraries are incredibly important. I think that and schools are grounds for free speech, and the way that you deal with free speech is you banning Alex Jones from social media made Alex Jones the face of the Republican Party, at least the ideological center of it. Instead of the way that it used to work, which was your friend posted an Alex Jones link and everybody went, "Hey, bro, what are you doing?" Right? That was the moderation, and that worked because it was a person. It wasn't you getting mad at Zuckerberg, right? That's social capital coming into play to solve a problem, and people fact checking. And I think part of the reason we're in the mess that we're in is that I want to know where you stand. I want to know if you're an anti-Semite. I don't want Britain banning these free speech marches for one side or the other. I want to know where you stand, right? Like if you are racist, if you are holding opinions that are awful, if you are holding opinions that are just milquetoast and everybody thinks is like, let's have those conversations and deal with that stuff. And books are ground zero. Obviously I love books. I think it is the foundation of how we keep society free And it's through free speech. It's through these
Chris,
conversations.
so Chris, I love what you're saying. So what are your thoughts on how libraries are changed? So, you know, room full of books, everything's great. I see the books behind you, but a lot of the experiences that patrons are having is electronic.
Yeah.
So people are able to access entire collections without ever physically going into a library. So what do you foresee down the road that library experience being? Is it that we all deserve like access to information electronically, or we physically have to go to the library to get it, be via and consume it via the Dewey Decimal System and where it's warehoused? Or do we just move forward with this electronic library experience where everything's available to everyone?
I think you'll pry the Dewey Decimal System out of my cold dead hands. I don't know of a better way, but I've got it memorized. All right. I don't want you to move my 9 7.2s. I love physical books. I mean, there's literally a pile of 200 books. I got my wife's library card. I'm cheating at the Central Library. I love physical copies because I can thumb through it, look in the index, but I also use electronic, right? And during the pandemic, to the credit of the Central Library, I walk in there now. They're still wearing masks. I think I know where they stand politically. They're down at the Central Library, which I visit a couple times a week. They have Joseph Merkele's books. They have Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s books on Fauci. They have Scott Atlas's books. I mean, these are things that, given the choice, the librarians would probably light on fire if they could during the middle of that pandemic in 21. But it was important to have balance. Glenn Beck's new book comes out, they buy it, right? And I think that is the measure of like a mature librarian, is if are you ordering things so everybody can have access to it digitally, electronically. Like the sad part is I'm usually the only ones in the stacks. Like the Central Library is usually used for computers, bathrooms, kids area, not for the physical copies. So you know, I don't know all the intricacies of that part, but I do know that as a user, I love having access to digital and physical copies because I want to use it where and how I want to use it, right? Like history books on my Kindle, research books physically, right?
Yeah, I do think, you know, you made a key word. You said there was balance. And I think that, you know, there's still some people that like to have a newspaper in their hand. You know, when I'm in construction, when I don't like, I can look at a blueprint on my phone, but I like to have the thing out there. I like to make notes on it. It's just what I'm used to. And I think the library's like that. I think as long as we keep balance of maybe physical and digital, I think it's going to work. But, you know, you look at, just take our news, our big news, the Fox and the CNN, they get so out of balance that they start falling off the edges. I really think that the key is balance. So Tiffany, I guess your answer to your question is, as long as you have a good balance of both of those, I think they both can survive.
So the other part of balance is understanding that when you're in the library and you're in the stacks, it has been curated by someone. And authors write what, authors will write what publishers will buy, and publishers will publish what people will pay for. And so that's part of it, is that you have to understand that what, you know, those top 10 books, you know, you're going to see a lot of those, but you may not see, you know, those other books that are published, and that you know, like you're just not always going to see everything, and your experience in the stacks is curated by someone. And so when you talk about balance, that can be a difficult thing to ensure. You know, and that's part of the conversation is, you know, are we getting those unpopular conservative books along with our liberal books? Do we have, and this is something that Michael will talk about, you know, and we had we had homeschool moms come and talk to us about character building books that were not available in the physical stacks, that were only available online. So you have to be in the stacks to understand what is and is not in the stacks, and understand that your experience is curated by somebody. And I think that we have to be much more purposeful with what is in the stacks.
Is that not the case with the online stuff? Do you not have to buy the books in the same way that you buy physical copies for the Overdrive stuff?
So what I'm saying is that like we can have more titles available online, and the person who's looking at books online, they're going to have a different experience. But when you're in the library walking around and you're picking up things, that needs to be a balanced experience. You need to be just as likely to find a book about traditional family values and a book about new kinds of families.
Right.
You know, there
But
needs to be kind of balance.
If they're shelved by author, how do you? I don't understand how you, when you say it's curated by someone, we were just talking about
Displays.
how. Oh, so we're talking about strictly displays. We're not talking about the way that they're shelved or anything like that, right?
I'm not talking about like what's on an end cap. I'm talking about what's physically in the collection. It
What's
needs
available.
Yeah.
So all of the books. So
Correct.
who
It
is
just needs to be a balanced collection. That's all.
But so who's the someone that is curating it, I guess?
The librarian, whoever buys the books.
Yeah. So Brad, there's an opening at the Hamilton County Library, and I know we talked about this. You know,
That's
you
the thing too. Like
pop on
conservative
down.
books are not unpopular, but like they are the ones that like go out a lot. Like conservatives are like really huge readers, and we do get those books though, like the Robert Kennedy books. Like it is so important for a library to have that variety, and so I guess if that wasn't the case, but I can't imagine that Hamilton East doesn't have all of those books though. Like I would assume that Hamilton East is balanced.
You go back and you look at some recordings. I think it might have been the March meeting. We had homeschool moms come and talk to us about what they did and did not find in the library. So I will give you that opportunity to research that. And it was coming straight from homeschool moms who use the library differently because they're trying to augment the curriculum that they're doing at home, and they're trying to make sure that the books are there that they want their children to read, and they just talked about being physically unable to find them in the stacks.
So not to look, I'm on the board of a homeschooling organization, so not to besmirch my homeschool moms out there, Lucy, but why bring that to the board and make that a board issue? Why not just ask the librarians to purchase those books?
You'll have to look. I believe they'd asked, but that they were trying to talk about what is in the physical collection, that curated experience that you're having. If it is not a balanced experience, those books are missing from that curated experience.
Right. So everybody needs to be represented though. Like, so representation matters.
Physical representation, that is missing. So that does affect the experience that you have when you walk through the stacks. That's all I'm saying.
I would think, Tiffany, like as librarians, you're responsive to market demands, for lack of a better term. Like if something's getting hundreds of checkouts on the e version, you're going to go, well, maybe there's a demand, and we've had 17 people ask for this book, right? Like let's bring these books in. Or at Marion County, I'll request some of the most obscure books. Like books from the and they get them for me because I ask and it's on the roster. I don't ever talk to anybody. It's just a market demand.
When I find books that I think are important or especially inspirational, I just buy a couple of copies and I take them to the libraries and donate them. I hope that they end up in circulation, like Frank McKinney, who has the I can't even believe this guy is friends with me. He is so cool. But he builds entire villages in Haiti. He's a Hoosier. And so frank-mckinney.com if you get the chance to go there. He's somebody I'll make the connection for you, Chris. You need to have him on his podcast. He's built, I think, 28 entire villages in Haiti in like 22 years. He's a really incredible person. He's got like 7 bestsellers. So when they come out, I buy a couple of copies and I take them to the libraries that I frequent, because people need to know that that this is a possibility for your own life to follow and greatness and do what other people have done.
Yeah. So Lucy, speaking of Haiti, and we've had our guest on before, and Poverty Inc. was one of the movies. I happened to watch that movie, and it was very interesting and a lot of it's Haiti, Africa. It's basically about countries lesser than ours and how we go in and screw up the markets by flooding them with subsidized rice and food, then that makes the locals not be able to sell their goods. So they quit and then they're dependent. So that pretty much was Poverty.
It almost sounds like a concerted effort in a playbook. So let me ask you this question, Chris, because I know we're over time and we really appreciate you staying with us. My final question for you is, if there were a book and if there were a podcast, that you don't produce, that you would love to have, people in Indiana or even around the world listen to and read, what would be a book that you wish like everybody would read, and maybe a podcast that you think is so good that everybody should listen to?
That's really hard
The
because
Chris Spangle show.
yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna plug myself. I will punt and be a little self-centered with my answer, but I think the book that changed my life was a book called Scary Close by Donald Miller. And it's what convinced me to go to therapy. And I was such a mess that I was going to therapy twice a week for 2 years and then once a week for the next 2. That book, I think, was such a great memoir about getting in touch with a person's self-worth, that everybody would benefit from it, and the people who really could benefit from it probably would have a pretty good experience. I think when people get in touch with understanding their own self-worth, their own dignity, their own God-given natural self-worth, I think it's just such a powerful thing, and it changed my life. It made my marriage, my kids, my career art going up, just like it changed the course of my life. So I think that would be the book that I would recommend. And a podcast that I wish everybody would listen to, like, I think like if I were trying to indoctrinate people, that'd probably be The Remnant with Jonah Goldberg. I think that's a pretty good podcast that covers a wide variety of like issues from like a not crazy center right perspective, and I think you'd find balance that you don't find other places. But I'd also say The Daily by the New York Times. I think that like does a good job in a fun storytelling way. Like if you don't know much about the news and just kind of want to like wade in, like that's probably a good place to start. But yeah, my favorite podcast is The Remnant for sure. I get the most out of that.
All right.
Cool.
All right. That is, well, it's been, the time has flown by, and Tiffany, you better late than never coming on today. So we're going to expect you to be on time next week, or I'm going to dock your pay.
Gonna dock my pay?
Yeah. I'm sorry, but
Damn,
we
nothing,
have rules here.
is nothing.
Yeah. So, and next week, Chris, we have somebody reached out. His name is Chris Widener, and he's got 190. I know, I never heard of him either. So, but what on StreamYard, we have collaborators and different, and people are sort of, I call it cross-pollinating. We're cross-pollinating our shows tonight, your show and our show.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we sort of, promote each other's show. I'm sure that some of our viewers here will watch yours, and none of your viewers are going to slum it and come watch our show, but that's part of it.
That's not true. I shared this on all our platforms. I'm sure there's,
Oh yeah, we know. I like to make fun of ourselves. It's easy.
I was waiting for Tiffany to make fun of you. I was promised that, and I didn't get it yet.
Tiffany, you've missed it.
Okay, thank you so much. I was gonna. What's up with the glasses? Is this like a Ringo Starr moment?
I'm Bono. Yeah, you gotta have glasses on.
Joe Burrow quit wearing the glasses. He's working on his game. But what's up with the glasses?
See,
I have
there you go, Chris. On demand. On demand.
I have noticed that male celebrities of a certain age will start wearing glasses with tinted lenses. And I don't know if it's like man makeup.
My reading glasses over.
I'm like, what's up? Like all of a sudden you can't see people's eyes. And
hey, when you get old like me, all of the people I went to grade school with, we all look the same, and we're just trying to be cool. I mean, just trying to keep somebody from putting me in a nursing home. So that's all I'm after. I'm just trying to stay just cool enough that they'll let me walk outside somewhere. So that's don't hate the player, hate the game. That's what I'm saying. So,
Chris, I wish I could have spent more time with you. You seem very interesting.
Yeah, I'd love to chat.
Well, we're not done yet. There's still conspiracy time.
Yeah, Chris, you're not a politician. You're mandatory to stick around for this. You don't have to have a conspiracy, and then also if you would stick around after the show, I keep forgetting to tell guests that, and then they go away like we hated them. So we have a brief thing on that. But it's time for the conspiracy theory. So I'm going to play the little music, and people are going to put hats on, and some people put ears on. But let's get to it. Hey y'all, it's time for the conspiracy theory, so you better get your tinfoil hat out and let's see what's going on this week. Okay, so let's see. I have to make that a little longer. It looks like Tiffany's got Jiffy Pop on her head. What's that all about?
It's a flower.
Oh, it's a flower. Well, it's good. So
Lucy looks like she's been in battle, the World War I of conspiracy.
Oh yeah, she is definitely that. I heard somebody talking about Bill Gates today, and it was on Twitter, and I tried to tag you on it, Lucy, but I couldn't remember what your handle was.
Just so you know, Chris, you've known me for I don't know, a decade or so, maybe longer. It's not conspiracy theory. I always bring conspiracy fact. I think out of 146, and I'll give chapter and verse. I think I've actually had fun, like.
What's funny is you used to post things and then somebody would send it to me and go, what is the Senate candidate doing? And now if you post those same things, everybody goes, did you see? She's exactly right. Like it's weird, that cultural shift. COVID really made you mainstream, Lucy. It's your time.
Gosh, I'm so grateful to the little spike protein and its role in my life.
Mainstream Lucy.
Yeah,
that sounds terrible.
Okay. So who wants to go first tonight on the conspiracy? I'm going to throw it out there. So Lucy, you got to go.
Of course, and I've got to give props to Adam. He says Lucy probably has a Faraday cage built into that hat. One of my projects for this spring is actually to get the EMF blocking paint, and paint the house. With the EMF blocking paint so that, we do get some sort of protection from the 5G signals. There is some speculation about cancer causing. And what I continually fight my husband on last house and this house is I want everything to be wired. Get rid of the iPads, get rid of the, the Wi-Fi and make everything wired so that we're not surrounding ourselves with that. I'm even to the point where Dr. Mercola, Chris had mentioned that you can get Dr. Mercola books at the library. He went through his offices and did everything wired, and his main breakers, except for like HVAC and refrigerator, he turns off in his home every night because there are electrical fields in the walls surrounding the wires. Those of you that don't know, my understanding is electricians have the highest rate of cancer of any of the trades, and it's probably from dealing with those fields. So I don't know, what has Bill Gates been doing? He's already announced the next pandemic. And remember when he and Melinda Gates were, did she go back to being Melinda French after she got rid of him for his pedophilic Jeffrey Epstein ways?
Man, Lucy brings it.
I'm not going to apologize, man. I look at that one thing. I probably shouldn't even say this. But there's this one.
That's usually a good sign to not say it, Lucy.
That's usually when I can't help myself. So I'll try and use some alternative words. So there was this time when Bill Gates got a pie in the face. If you guys all remember that during the Monopoly trials. And I just keep thinking, what if somebody had a time machine and they could unalive him? Would it even make a difference? If there was some person from the future, Terminator style, that did that.
Do you have a Lucy disclaimer?
Oh yeah, I do.
Yeah, he does usually have a ribbon going around the bottom. So I'm just going to say that, it's Bill Gates's fault once again. The whole reason that, it was 80 degrees last week down here in Southern Indiana and my plants could not stay dormant like they're supposed to. He's waking up my plants with his geoengineering. And, the global warming is actually global cooling because of the grand solar minimums. So if you guys don't know about grand solar minimums, you need to go find out. Just like was it 1812 or something? Was it 1812? Thomas Jefferson almost went bankrupt because they didn't get enough sunlight that summer. They were in the middle of a grand solar minimum. Yeah, and if it wasn't 1812, it was very, very close to that year. There's the historian Chris can tell us. I'm sure that'll be one of the next thing he looks at. What did that happen? But yeah, I'm going to bring a very weak conspiracy theory this week. And it's just going to be Bill Gates once again trying to kill humanity. Although
he's trying to save it because he's trying, because we're too many of us.
Well, the real thing that honestly is conspiracy right now that's happening is the folks that are detransitioning, their voices are being suppressed. I was just watching watching a podcast before this, and what was shocking to me was listening to people that have detransitioned or are trying to detransition, and finding out that the military, a lot of people were joining the military to get their transition surgeries paid for. 30% of the folks that were in the military, is tracked by TRICARE, that started cross-sex hormone therapy. They stopped. They just stopped taking the therapy.
Look, you're gonna have to put a cap on conspiracies with Lucy. I'm telling you.
We've had a week off. We've had a week off, so she's got some build up.
Take my time. You're good.
Yeah. Tiffany doesn't like to do the conspiracy, especially now that she has to be like all respectable as an elected official. But that's definitely something that, I just want to put out there, is that I'm very concerned about those that are detransitioning and how they are suppressed, because their voices matter. And I feel like it's so profitable to transition people. Like there's a bullseye with a $1.3 million price tag on everybody that they can convince to become a lifelong customer of Big Pharma.
So I have a question. So you said that they're being tracked by TRICARE, but they've stopped transitioning?
Yeah. So when they we don't know if they stopped transitioning, but they stopped taking the hormones, because that's what the military insurance TRICARE was tracking, was, how many prescriptions are created and how many prescriptions are used or filled. And 30% of them just stopped filling the prescriptions. So I thought that was really interesting. But the thing that really broke my heart listening to this, and it was Patrick Bet-David. He's one of my favorite podcasters. He's a business guy, but he's not afraid to bring the truth. This person that was detransitioning was heartbroken because he realized he had his genitalia mutilated, removed, and there was nothing wrong with it. He said, there was nothing wrong with my physical body, and a surgeon, a doctor who was supposed to first do no harm, was willing to amputate parts of my body when there was nothing wrong with those parts of my body. I was like, wow, that's just crazy. So anyway, the conspiracy theory part of that is that it's all for the money. What kind of market is being created for, Lupor and the other hormonal blockers, puberty blockers?
Aren't a lot of those generics?
It doesn't matter if they're generic; they're still insanely profitable. I mean, anything you can make for $1 and sell for $3 and then create a market. It's just like when they did the Gardasil vaccine. We were told that it was for, cervical cancer. Well, then inexplicably, they're like, wow, we got half the teenagers, half the population to take this. How can we expand our market share? Well, now we're going to sell it as an anti-HPV throat cancer drug, and we're going to give it to boys who don't have cervixes.
Well, I will tell you, my theory on Gardasil and the that vaccine is that they know that your mouth, esophageal, some of your head and neck cancers, your anal cancers, those are HPV cancers. And sometimes people can clear them, but in women, you'll see the uterine cancers. And so they figured out that men are getting these mouth cancers, esophageal, throat cancers, and they figured out how and what's going on. And so instead of vaccinating men as a way to prevent them from developing these head and neck cancers, they decided that it was better to vaccinate the women first, because when those commercials first came out for Gardasil, they never mentioned HPV cancers. They never talked about the throat, the mouth, the esophageal cancers. They never talked about that at first. And those cancers are HPV cancers in men. When men have throat, tonsil, mouth cancers, usually they are HPV cancers. And they never talked about that initially. I learned that from a doctor up in Zionsville. We're talking about mouth cancers and the prevalence of those.
And and you know what else they never talk about? They never talk about that a normal functioning immune system completely decimates and clears out basically any human papillomaviruses. It's only if your immune system is already wrecked or has a problem that you're going to do that. They also don't talk about the fact that there's over 170 different HPV viruses that have been identified. And of course, there are more that haven't been, but yet they chose these 4 that if you actually read the studies, they've not been able to show causation between those 4 and the original first Gardasil shot. Now it's up to 9, that there is no link to female cancers with those particular 4. And they also don't talk about the fact that it was not a placebo, blind placebo controlled trial with an inert placebo. In fact, they used the same aluminum adjuvant that's used in the shot as the placebo. And so you had similar neurological events, similar damages between both the placebo, because it wasn't inert, it was an aluminum adjuvant placebo.
That's my Lucy. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you know, you get me going.
give somebody a week off and they come up with all that business.
Here, let me
So-
just shut up, because we're going to be 11 o'clock if I
We
don't.
just mad because it's true.
Yeah, we
true.
about 7 more minutes. We'll have the record show, so we're getting close now. Tiffany, I got one for you, and this is something that probably the people don't know, but you know, whenever I ask you about doing an interview during the time you were on the library board and running for office, you always said, "No, I'm going to listen to my consultant." I just want everybody to know that her consultant was Bigfoot. That's all. You know, that's what it was. So
you know what? I will plug my consultants. I worked with Right Strategies out of Iowa, and they gave me really great advice. You know, during the course of the election, that's something we can talk about another time. Up here in Hamilton County, actually, one of my running mates got a little bit more heat about the library than I did, because he gave a statement, and it was just very, very unfortunate and taken out of context. And if anybody's ever running for office, don't make a comment, because it can be used against you in so many different ways. People will choose different words. I've written statements for a local newspaper, and they'll just take the sentences that they like. And
they're good at that.
Yeah, and it's very, very unfortunate when things like that are put out in the media, misconstrued, and then people just take things to run with. Oftentimes, the title of the article and the content of the article are 2 totally different things. You know, we need to probably do a show about how destructive the media can be, with being very poignant with what they want to do, and then stirring up those culture wars, just stoking the fire, just stoking.
Every single event that I ever went to, they walked in with an agenda. They were there to plug in quotes. I love Jim Sheldon now, we're friends, but he did me dirty at one of Melissa Donaghy's like tax rallies in 2010 or whatever, some Tea Party rally. He had his narrative already set, and then I had 45 great clear seconds and 3 seconds of muttering. And he used the 3 seconds of muttering along with another Tea Party person who didn't know her stuff, and made us all look like we didn't know what we're doing. And so from then on in the Libertarian Party, it was called Getting Shelled. And, you know, it's like Stu Finken and Carmel, like deny Moms of Liberty. Well, the second you play their game, or you play the Democrats' game, and instead of managing your campaign on your terms, and you change you like choose to play someone else's game, now all of a sudden, will you deny Donald Trump? Will you deny this? Will you deny that? Will you deny that? Right? It'll be a never-ending parade of denials. So you're better off just like taking the not deny. Like, even though everybody knows Moms of Liberty wasn't promoting Hitler, they shouldn't have used a Hitler quote. They apologized. They were calling their opponents Hitler, which is a completely inappropriate thing. It's that whole thing was completely convoluted and taken out of context from the very beginning all the way through the Carmel's mayor's race. And it's like, where's the honesty about it? Like, just be honest. I know it's not going to, but you walk into the Indianapolis Star or any of these TV stations, what do you see when you walk into these newsrooms? Giant television screens that show the amount of clicks, the top click stories.
Oh, wow.
And the incentive is to get the most click story, because that is what pleases your editors. So
I've been used.
That's why you have been. And that's why anytime Bob and Tom coughs, it gets 3 times the clicks. Or Pat McAfee lifts his leg and farts. Oh, we better print this. Or
does he own a shirt with a sleeve? I mean,
no.
Does he? Anything with a sleeve. So I just wanted to say, when you were talking about Moms for Liberty and the Hitler quote and all that, I don't think anybody realized, this is my conspiracy theory, that newsletter went out about 10 days before their national conference. No one was talking about Moms for Liberty before that newsletter went out. And I'm telling you, 10 days later, they had their national conference, and all the candidates were there, because I think it broke on like a Wednesday or a Thursday. And then a week later, they were in their national meeting.
Yeah, but then Robert Kennedy actually canceled because of that. Like, they got a lot of bad press from that, I thought.
They got a lot of good press too. They had every Republican candidate come through their meeting. For Moms for Liberty, it was
that was already planned.
It was a great conference for them. But the thing is that before that newsletter went out, no one was talking about them. So that newsletter did what it was supposed to do. It got people talking about Moms for Liberty because nobody was talking about them.
Yeah, they popped on the scene. Well, just think about poor Jefferson Shreve coming on our show, and the Democrats used that against him about his flip flop on the rights, or West coming on there and saying that, and then the next day they used it against him in the deposition. So yeah, it's you can see that.
That was pretty crazy that Rust comes on and talks, and then the next day they're like grilling him on what he said on this show. That was awesome.
No, they actually used a clip, I guess, is what I understood. So
did you get paid? Did you get paid?
We didn't get nothing. We got a pretty good bump out of the Jefferson Shreve thing, because I went on Hammer and Nigel's show and we talked about that, and I think our friend Tony Kennett was filling in for Nigel, so it was fun going on that show. But it helped our show. I mean, it didn't do much for Jefferson, but it did ours. So I can see why.
There's no help in Jefferson.
Do it. Yeah, that was not good. So Brad, what do you have something? Do you have a conspiracy?
My conspiracy is the mini bikes downtown. I still don't get it.
Mini bikes,
like the little scooters.
Okay, the scooters. Yeah.
Oh, geez,
you can get injured on that thing.
Well, but I still don't understand how that was even passed. Like,
y'all are boomers. You can't you can't have a funny city without the scooters. I use the scooters all the time.
Yeah,
they are tremendous for the city. They're great for the city. And don't you ever have your Democrat mouth start talking about banning the scooters, because I will come to whatever small podunk town you are and I'll put 17 outside your house.
No, I swear. I actually
the little green lights will be flashing.
I rode 3.1 miles last night because I just lost track of time. I went around Victory Field. I went around Lucas Oil. I was bebopping everywhere. Yeah. I love that thing.
It's fun.
Yeah. Oh, it was like at midnight too, so it was like nobody was out. It was sweet.
Yeah, those things are dangerous. You kids are going to get hurt. I remember back in the day we had these things called skateboards. They didn't have a motor. So.
Back in the 1980s, apparently.
Not back in 1970 something. Come on, Chris, give me a break. All right, so Chris, do you have a conspiracy?
Yeah, there's no way that New Zealand exists. You can't convince me that it's not part of Australia. It's not real.
Oh, okay. That never crossed my mind, but I believe you, because it takes too long to get there.
They look the same. It's the same country,
same accent,
same
everything. It's just
they just made up the Kiwi thing. They just lied about that.
One's Lord of the Rings, though. Like,
it's Australia.
It's Australian.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, hey, Brad, say you take from your house and you go east to Australia. Yeah. Now you take and go west to Australia from your house, or to New Zealand. It's the same place. You're just going around the world.
Just Australia's dandruff.
Yeah.
This is the most horrible conspiracy theory. Like, I can't even grasp it, or
look it up in your library. Go to the geography section.
There are more sheep.
Yeah,
there are more sheep than women. That's got to make you.
That's right. You want a country full of sheep, Brad? Like America?
Oh dear, here we go. Okay, I'm going to rescue you. So you're talking about the Earth and everything. So my conspiracy theory tonight is we, you hear about people, we didn't really land on the moon. It was all staged. And, Neil Armstrong just was, I think he actually punched a guy for saying it was staged or something like that. Maybe he was making fun of his wife. But, that thing, that was not real. That was done in Hollywood. But there is some conflicting pictures out there, like this one. Now, how did we get that picture? If it was, did they do that in Hollywood? I mean, so I guess my conspiracy is I'm going to leave it open-ended to you. You got to believe
The
whether
conspiracy is that the moon landing happened.
or didn't. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That's the
Where we're at in
conspiracy.
America. John
Yeah.
Kennedy didn't kill himself.
No, he
Okay.
didn't, and neither did Epstein. So or Einstein or whatever that
I
guy
saw
was.
that.
They're
I
all
saw
relative.
that picture of the Earth, the big blue marble from space, and all I had to do was go to Chat GPT. So I'm going to question that that's even real.
That's even
I
real.
think
Yeah,
I think it's AI generated.
Da Vinci
So
painted it. Yeah,
what's the circa on that picture?
I have no idea.
1952.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
like,
this
go
one,
back-
this
go
one's
back-
1969. Now I know all you young. Maybe Lucy, you were born, and were you born
Nope,
before
How would be
71.
1969?
transmitting in color from the moon? I mean, I think
71.
that's pretty
Yeah,
good.
well, I actually watched the moon landing in second grade. We watched it live. That's how old I am. I'm sorry, but I am. So I
You really
believe it.
believe that we had live streaming capability from the moon?
Hey, I believe Neil Armstrong. I don't want him punching me. So, and you know, and
That's
then this.
Seriously.
We're
So
live streaming from the moon.
I'm going to take a second and just be really serious here, because
Tiffany.
this is me saying I muted myself. This is me saying that this is actual conspiracy theory. I'm not going to tell you whether I believe it one way or another, but the best conspiracy theory I've heard about the moon landing is that it was both. That we did actually land, yeah, that we did actually land on the moon, but what they found there was so disturbing that they couldn't actually show any of the real video. You know, maybe it's like the Mormon founder Joseph Smith said that there are people that live on the moon that dress very much like Quakers. Maybe Joseph Smith was right. I don't know. But apparently it was so disturbing that they had to recreate it on a Hollywood soundstage so that they could have something they could show the American public. Just
Yeah,
saying.
because they spent a heck of
It's
a
like
lot of money.
everybody gets a trophy.
So who was holding the camera? I
yeah.
want to know who was holding the camera. That's
Yeah, that's right. That Buzz Aldrin was.
he was.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to go with. I mean, name like Buzz, he had to be like a
I mean,
photographer or
but did
something.
he have a tripod? Was he? I mean, because it's so stable. I mean, was he?
Well, it's not like there's wind up there.
He
It's
had a
all, you know,
gimbal.
you float away if you're not careful.
Of course
So,
he had a gimbal.
he had a gimbal.
Standard issue in 0G, right?
Yeah, that's you guys.
I mean, all
All
that
right.
equipment on.
I've had enough of this show. Next week we got Chris Widner on. Chris,
Thanks
go
for
ahead.
putting up with us,
Chris,
Chris.
go ahead and tell our audience where they can find your shows and on again. And
Yeah, you can find all my stuff at chris-spangle.com. Search for the Chris Spangle Show. Love to have you download that podcast, sign up for the newsletter at chris-spangle.com. And Miss Pat settles it every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. on BET. It's the funniest television show you'll see. It's fantastic. Check it out. Yeah, that's right, Tiffany. I'm on BET.
Yeah. My face give it away.
That's the conspiracy theory, is that the white kid from Plainfield is on BET.
Yeah.
There's only two explanations. The first is Jesus, second is Miss Pat. So
who is Miss Pat?
Miss Pat is a comedian that I met at the Bob and Tom show. She grew up in inner city Atlanta and then moved to Plainfield, Indiana, my hometown. And she was starting a podcast. We do a podcast together called The Pat Down. And she's the funniest comedian you will ever see. She's hilarious. And she's got the Miss Pat show on BET. And then she does this Judge Judy court show with real cases. And then there's a celebrity jury and me. And we help her talk through the cases. It's really good. It's really funny. It's produced by the people that did Jersey Shore, so they know how to make great television. So it's just
You're
wild.
kind of famous. Look at you. Front of the line at Outback. Yay.
That's my dream, is just to get when I go to Chili's, to get free Southwestern egg rolls.
Really?
If I'm not in the Plainfield High School Hall of Fame by the end of the next year, I'm going to riot.
How old are you?
40.
It's gonna be well. This has been fun and interesting, and we have officially gone past the record for this show. We're at 147.
Chris
and
is setting all kinds of records.
I have an ending. I have an ending here, but I don't know who's in it. I know that Lucy's in it.
Are we done? Are we done?
Yeah, we're done. We started at 9, Tiffany. You got here at the end of the show. Are you on Central Time or something?
I didn't set my clock back, but yeah, I had some things erupt right at about 8:57.
Yeah, that's usually when we're getting on the air. I think people think we rehearse this this show, not so much. So anyway, hey, tune in again next week for more fun and festivities, and we'll see what this Chris Widener or Widner, however you say his name's, what he's got. He's supposed to be this big time speaker around the country, 191,000 followers, probably bought and paid for all those, but we'll give him a whirl.
Well, what did you say about me last week when you were teasing me?
It was a rerun last week. It was even worse.
Yeah. I know I said that on the preview show. If you want to watch the preview show, I usually do it before church on Sundays. So I didn't say anything. I think on the show I put the Chris Spangled banner. That was my, I know, it's funny. But anyway, okay, bye, kids. We'll see you next week. Stick around, Chris, for a second on the backside.
Yeah.
Over now.
Yeah.